Yeah, okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Yaron Velner. I'm here to speak about potentially completely different aspects of DeFi, less about regulations, more about actually how to make DeFi platforms even more independent and self-executable, and removing human factor out of them. In the most general sense, so the DeFi risk, kind of encompass many aspects. In this talk, and this is also my main expertise, I'm only covering economic risk management. And also economic risk management is a very big topic, so we'll even narrow it down to something which is kind of the most active risk management that is currently done in DeFi, which is risk management of lending markets and stablecoins, where basically in the lending market, you give a loan to someone, and your main hope and only hope is to eventually get the loan back when you want it. Of course, everything is done in a permissionless manner, so someone just, give you a collateral in return to the loan. This is the only guarantee for the user to eventually return the loan. And therefore, the relevant parameters to define a loan is mostly the loan to value, which means how much you let a person borrow against his collateral. For example, let's say ETH is $2,000, and I want to borrow USDC, for example, and I'm giving you one ETH collateral, then obviously if you give me too much credit there, at certain point ETH price might go down and I will just run away without paying the debt, and everything is permissionless here. So basically your funds are lost or partially lost in the general case. And right now these are done, all these risk models and assessment are done mostly by humans. Okay, so eventually you have some DAO that vote and approves them. So maybe unlike at TradeFi, everything is completely transparent. And at the end of the day, and I think even in this conference, there are at least like 3 talks about it, how to actually do this risk management. And people try to automate it, and of course there's a lot of machinery and backend behind it. But at the end of the day, there is a human or a group of people that is sort of in charge of it and run these analyses daily. And then, as of now, I'm also part of this human factor. So at B protocol, which I founded, we try to mitigate the human factor and kind of promote more automated risk management. But I'm also a contributor to the risk DAO. In the risk DAO, we just give risk analysis as a service to protocols, which, by definition, services are done by human with human bias and everything. And the way I see this area, and the way lending markets and stablecoins operate, they are kind of in sharp contrast to what we see now in decentralized exchanges, for example. And previously I was CTO of Kyber Network. Kyber Network was one of the earliest decentralized exchanges. Back in the day, we did a lot of liquidity provision, not by fixed formulas, but actually by on-chain algorithms. And then at certain state, Uniswap emerged, even Bancor before it, and the standard kind of became, let's replace humans with a formula. Despite the formula might, humans might overperform a formula, but still it has a lot of advantages. Even if it's less optimal, could be potentially even less efficient. There is a lot of merit into having, completely self-executed and permissionless protocols. And risk management, has kind of notorious history already from traditional finance. I think kind of the whole Bitcoin, initiative, or Bitcoin started because of the 2008 debt crisis. which some argued, was kind of fueled at least by credit rating agencies. Of course, in crypto, it's even more notorious. We all witnessed how 3Arrow, how FTX, all gave bad loans, did very, so with FTX, it was outright fraud maybe, but, we had Genesis, 3Arrow, Celsius doing, something which is at best not optimal risk management. But also in traditional finance, we see this tweet about the London metal exchange, fully regulated, reputable, traditional financial institute. So at a certain point, they decided to freeze the liquidation mechanism, which is, like at least conceptually, not very different from, FTX freezing liquidations to Alameda. Of course, the intent was completely different. They did it for a good cause. But accidentally, by chance or not by chance, it also helped one of the big whales there not to get liquidated. And, we can argue forever whether it was the right decision, whether it's a objective decision, fair decision. And here what I'm trying to say is that, we shouldn't necessarily optimize for the best decisions, but, DeFi should be more about also transparency and fairness, even if it is on the expense of efficiency. But by the way, the same way that blockchain themselves are much less efficient than, any Amazon cloud or cloud service that you can have out there. Okay, so this is crypto, but of course, in DeFi, this would never happen, right? So DeFi is fully transparent, everything, we know what is going on. So DeFi is transparent, but right now, most lending markets are really kind of on-chain finance rather than decentralized finance. Or maybe I should say differently. So it's very decentralized, very transparent, but even in a decentralized setup, you still have politics. So this is a recent event where paves community were discussing whether they should freeze liquidations during the USDC depegging. So it's important, kind of to emphasize that, Aave community is great, specifically here, Gantland are great. In this case, there's no evidence, they had any hidden agenda or anything, and it's, eventually they didn't take this decision. Things could have turned out differently, and maybe it was very justifiable to take this decision. But still, it doesn't, it does make the decision better, but it doesn't change the concept that, we have like, actually most of DeFi TVL right now is actually subject to, human or political decisions. So what is it, we are trying to promote? And this is very much still a work in progress. So eventually deciding on, loan conditions is very much biased, and I would even say rightfully so biased to some domain expertise and maybe some political agenda. And typically this risk analysis, embeds kind of objective quantitative metrics, which we all like to present. But then there's a lot of black magic and voodoo about kind of domain-specific knowledge. And also again here, I'm not arguing it's not justifiable. It's very, justifiable. If you look at Luna case, UST, there are a lot of things there you couldn't have seen, just by looking at the cold quantitative metrics. But of course, it's then becoming sort of political. Then, okay, maybe UST is outright, wrong. What about USDT? There's a lot of human input there. You try to assess, like the risk position of a user, whether it will get liquidated. I know some teams have some knowledge about, kind of the geophysical location of the user, and can because of the transaction history, for example, and see, like the time zones that is mostly active on. And then, you can try to optimize and maybe even feed it to machine learning and kind of say, users from Korea might be riskier. And of course, eventually you have to balance some risk-reward between, like the risk the lending market take and the profit they generate. So all of these decisions, are very rightful decisions. Of course, if you can optimize your risk management by kind of classifying users according to their, I don't know, ethnicity or origin, it might be even maybe your duty as a risk manager. But then, kind of the question if it's really, if you want to do something different in DeFi, even on the expense of making it less optimal. So what we are trying to promote, and this is still a work in progress, we want eventually, and this will have to be gradual and on our best effort basis, but eventually we want smart contracts to make all these decisions, okay, rather than DAO votes or others. And ideally, at the end of the day, or, I don't know, 10 years from now, we want it to be all based on some quantitative, objective metrics. But of course, the way there is still very long. As I mentioned, a lot of the domain expertise, so it's very justifiable to use it in risk analysis. So in addition to this quantitative data, we also initially allow for some confidence factor, which is basically some kind of a magic number that's supposed to embed, like all the human-specific assumptions about this asset. And then giving, these two inputs, smart contract can just decide on a loan-to-value ratio. So we recently, last week, published like the first candidate for such a formula. And I'm not sure, this is like really the place to discuss all the different parameters, but I just want to kind of demonstrate that, like these parameters are sort of market objective parameters. And here we have this magic number, which give room to some user input, to some human input in the process. So again, this is very much still a work in progress, and if you want to read more about the formula, I will give some references later. But other than, so one kind of front is to extend the research about what kind of formulas could support such activity. But then another front, and this is where we at the B protocol mostly focus, is how to actually put this data on chain. Because right now, key indicators such as asset liquidity, market, DEX liquidity, etc., asset volatility are not really available, for example, by Chainlink oracles. And down the road, as as the formulas are getting more complex, additional input data will be needed. So this is right now our focus on B protocol. And of course, this part is not live yet and still work in progress. But even just by having this formula and the kind of the vision eventually is to have smart contracts control everything. But just by having the formula, we can still we are still able to introduce some higher transparency level across different platforms. So if you remember, the formula kind of gets market conditions plus some magic number, and then outputs a loan-to-value ratio. But we can kind of reverse the process, right? We can take existing loan-to-value ratios from lending market. We can take the market condition, and then output the magic number, which is this C value here. And basically, the higher the magic number is, it sort of means that the platform is taking lower risk. So this is a very kind of brief research we did on compound V3 markets on USDC. And you can see that for Wrapped Bitcoin, Uni and Link, we are sort of at the 6, and like the units here do not really matter, it's only for comparison. But like these 3 assets have sort of the same value. We see, and this is kind of justifiable probably, that ETH has a lower value, which means that allegedly they take more risk, but alternatively you can just argue that they see ETH as a safer asset, which is of course true. And then finally, if you look at the comp token, so you see it has the lowest loan to value, but also the lowest C, which means that according to this formula at least, despite having the kind of the most conservative setup for it, they are actually taking the biggest risk with comp. And also there, we can speculate why they decide to do it, and it's kind of maybe natural for the compound community to have more trust in comp. So this is kind of what this formula can offer now, but of course the future, we see it as much bigger. So in the future, we definitely envision somewhat fully permissionless lending markets, where all the loan to value and risk parameters are done fully automated, but automated with a smart contract, not automated by just some backend. It can still, allow the DAO to keep a lot of the sort of power they currently have. The DAO, for example, can configure this confidence level. They can still potentially blacklist certain assets. But like, and they can also decide actually on the formulas, right, that they want to apply for the risk management. But then, just by having this data layer inside, so that's kind of the missing block towards a fully permissionless lending market, which will again potentially be much less efficient, might even be a bit riskier, but we'll have the upsides of kind of being more loyal to the DeFi ethos and all the other potential advantages that can come with it. It can also, do some more basic stuff. For example, it can blacklist certain assets to not allow, like the market manager to list them, etc. So, this DeFi ethos, other than just, ideals and, I don't know, code and law statements, etc. At the end of the day, there's a lot of competitive barrier right now if you want to start your own lending market, because eventually, you have to compete. Let's say if you want to compete with Uniswap, then you can kind of compete on kind of hard objectives such as user interface, marketing, but it's kind of like an immutable contract that if you fork, people can just use it allegedly with the same risk level as they use Uniswap. But of course, if you want to fork Aave or Compound, then no, I mean, you will right now have to fork all of their team. And of course, it's not very likely that a smart contract will outperform, Aave or Maker Team if they are in the audience. But still, having some, self-executable smart contract can kind of play in the level and allow for competitive advantage to be less of a barrier, towards more innovation in this space. So with this risk oracle, we offer, it will offer more neutrality, automation, because also a lot of the risk management require DAO votes, which is a very tedious process. Much more transparency and decentralization. So with that, I'm concluded and happy to take any questions if you have.
Any questions?
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I wonder with your proposed solution, where do you see the risk of being manipulated as well as being accurately reflecting on the loan to value ratio sort of being net? And how do we deal with that?
Yeah, so even before manipulation, if you look at the UST, the Luna stablecoin, it wasn't even a manipulation, but it was the wallet was a lot beyond, a lot more there beyond, kind of dry data, right? I mean, like UST, it's kind of the Thanksgiving turkey paradox. So you feed the turkey for a month, and kind of the confidence that the turkey has on its owner only keeps increasing. So Luna was stable for years. And allegedly, if you look at the data, confidence has to be kind of up only. But of course, we all knew how it ended. In terms of, kind of blunt manipulations, so this is something, we hope to kind of handle in the data layer, right? So instead of just taking like the current market liquidity, we can average it, on the longer durations. And then manipulation will be costly. This is why the data in the Oracle layer is not a trivial part, and eventually it will take kind of a key role in preventing these manipulations.
Sorry, yeah, if you do like an average out sort of value, like a top sort of value, but that it's not going to be very accurate though, isn't it?
Yeah. No, okay, but here, like let's say even if you take like a day average or a week average, so yeah, it's not accurate, but of course, if you compare it to the current status quo, so you have like maker and Aave and compound, maybe voting on parameters once a month. So actually, in that regard, even if you take like a week average, it's still a big improvement in comparison to now. Still, replacing human is eventually less accurate. Humans are smart. So I think it's mostly about that. I mean, like manipulating the data will be fairly easy to mitigate, but kind of embedding domain-specific knowledge. So this is still an art, but again, we do hope, like along the way, either to figure it out, but also that people will be willing to kind of do the compromise and to be less precise but more permissionless.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Yaron.
Thank you.